iPhone 15 Pro Max versus Galaxy S23 Ultra 90 days later. Now, by the end of this video, you're going to find out why the iPhone 15 Pro Max scraped by with a win just slightly here. When it comes to price and value, on the surface, the Galaxy S23 Ultra seems like the better value pick because it does have a lower price point with these promotions and deals that you'll be getting for this phone. However, keep in mind that this actual retail price is pretty similar. But here's the issue I have with the Galaxy S23 Ultra, the resale value. While it does sell better than some cheaper Android phones, it never nets the same return when you sell the iPhone 15 Pro Max. And don't get it twisted, and I'm not talking like these are investments. They're definitely depreciating products. They don't really get you don't buy these to make buy these to make a profit like you would on like a stock or something. But at the same time, I like when I get more money back for my phone. And the S23 Ultra, while a beautiful product, it definitely doesn't get that same amount back. So that's kind of why I think it gets promotions and deals, because Apple knows that it's an iPhone. They know it's going to sell well, and they know it's going to get you a lot back on the trade-in as well down the line. So that's kind of what I like more about the value of the iPhone for the price point. I don't like how you don't get as many features with the 15 Pro Max, and it costs more though. That's super annoying. I really dislike that. I do feel like for your money, you actually, if you're going to use the phone for functionality purposes, using the edge panels, using the Galaxy's S Pen here and all these features that come with it, I do think that you actually get a little bit of a better value if you're actually going to use this stuff. You definitely do. Like, it's not even a question about it. So that's how I've been feeling about the price and value 90 days later. Now, regarding the design and the body, I will say I have to give it to the iPhone. It just feels a little bit more ergonomic to hold than the S23 Ultra, which feels wide, boxy, and tall. I don't feel like it's like the worst thing in the world. It definitely feels premium, and it has nice tapered edges at the sides of it, so it still feels good in the hand. But the iPhone 15 Pro Max, dropping its weight down, still having the curved corners, it just feels better to hold. That's just what I've noticed. This feels more boxy and big. It's really good if you're going to take advantage of the S Pen that is included, like we showed earlier, because it has more of this canvas notepad kind of feel to it. So it used to be called the Galaxy Note, but because of that reason, I think it's better for signing documents and doing things of that sort. But 90 days later, I have to say, ergonomically, I don't really like holding the S23 Ultra all that much by comparison to the iPhone 15 Pro Max. But you also have a Samsung option if you really appreciate this type of design. You have the Galaxy S23 Plus, which I think feels far better to hold than the S23 Ultra. Now, when it comes to display, I am picking the iPhone for one reason and one reason only. It's because for some reason, I don't know if it's the PWM, they call it like the flickering on the S23 Ultra, which your eye can see, but you can't really see. It's kind of like not really noticeable to the naked eye, but it happens. There's a flicker. But this one, maybe it's the vibrancy. I don't know. It just kind of like after using it for a while, it just irritates my eyes. Gives me like eye strain a little bit easier on the S23 Ultra. But that doesn't take away from the fact, if that doesn't bother you, if you don't have an issue with that type of stuff, that it's the much more vivid panel. It also has the ability to go extra brightness, which is crazy bright. This phone has QHD plus resolution that they let you tweak down to full HD, the customizability, the way you can take advantage of this display is just on another level compared to the iPhone. But what the iPhone does really well is just give you a display that's very naturally tuned. It looks pretty good, and overall, just very happy with the display itself. So if you are looking for that, the iPhone definitely nails it in this respect. So it's pretty good for me. 90 days later, though, I have to say that I like the reduced bezels here for this iPhone 15 Pro Max, but the Galaxy S23 Ultra still has this nice, like, slight curve to the edge. So it's not like the iPhone's like way ahead. You could see barely nothing down there. Punch hole display, not very distracting. And I just absolutely love how it takes advantage of this panel. This is like a true computer in your pocket right here versus a standard smartphone in the iPhone. So from a display perspective, the dynamic island gets more in the way. It's the S23 Ultra 90 days later. But for me personally, because I don't know, it irritates my eyes a little bit sometimes. That's going to be the iPhone for me. I think it's a little easier on the eye because it's just probably more natural tuned and stuff like that. But S23 Ultra definitely, if I'm being objective here, is definitely the winner. When it comes to software, I think they're even, but for different reasons. I think the iPhone is definitely more polished in my experience. 90 days later, I just love the ecosystem and how the AirPods work with the iPhone to the iPad to the Mac. I don't really love the Samsung ecosystem just because I feel like using Windows and Android are different, systems. And I think their, headphones work great. Like I got a lot of Galaxy Buds and stuff like that. And the tablets, if you stay within the mobile side of Samsung, it's really good. But if I grab a Galaxy Book, I don't like that I have to have a separate Microsoft account and all this stuff going on. It's just not as cohesive, not as simple as just like everything being one thing like Apple. Now Samsung tries to do this with with everything they can within their own, mobile side of things. But personally, I think it's a little bit more complex. I think it's a little bit easier for the average user to just use the iPhone ecosystem with their products. Just a little bit simpler than the Samsung. But the Samsung wins for a different reason. For work purposes, I think if you're, into, functionality, I can't get past the pop views. I can't get past the split screens. I mean, it's all here. If you're trying to really take advantage, you got the Samsung Dex mode. And then with the One UI 6, it got really nice looking now. Like it's really polished looking compared to before. Some people say the icons are too big, but you can just do a lot with this phone that you can't do on the iPhone. And because of that reason, the Samsung definitely has its own place in the market as well. The S Pen, I've talked about it already before. I find it really useful for signing documents as well as writing on calendar and creating notes. Also, if you need to smart select something, so let's say, for example, you're in a calendar and then you need to smart select something in a date, send it off to somebody and just circle the date or whatever and be like, this is the day we're doing this. Like there's just like a lot of uses for this where the S Pen is really good. Also, if you don't want to use your finger, you just want to pinpoint on something small on the screen, it's also good for that. So let's take it over to the Galaxy Store really quickly here and we'll show you what we're talking about. So let's go over to the menu and then go to My Apps, and you'll see like when you're clicking on like these little arrows or something small like that, clicking on here, clicking on like a little arrow right here, just little stuff like this, where you're just tapping on little things, little icon, little interface elements. It's just really easy to use the S Pen to dig around like that. Also, really no comparison when it comes to the amount of features on board. I do think the Samsung experience is just way more fun to use right now. It's fun. I mean, if you've been using a Samsung phone a while, it's probably not super fun anymore. Might be a little boring to you if you use it a lot, but if you never use Samsung and you want to try it, like there's a lot to play around with this phone. It's going to take a while to get boring. As a matter of fact, you might have to find time in your busy life to go ahead and be able to even play around with this thing. That's how much there is to do on here. But the iPhone still has it for that day-to-day easy practical use where you're like, I don't got time for that. I'm busy, I'm doing stuff, and you just want everything to work and always be consistent and smooth. It's really hard to beat this. It just doesn't really get beat, in my opinion, for that. Plus, Apple is much more consistent with the updates, whereas Samsung, while much better than before, and they're still doing really good with these updates, they seem to really prioritize the latest and greatest phones, which means that when the S24 Ultra comes out, this one will be playing second fiddle to the S24 Ultra, whereas with Apple, the 15 Pro Max, the 14 Pro Max, 13 Pro Max, these all get the updates at the same time. So it doesn't really feel like your phone's getting second dibs or, to the latest software update. I do have to say, 90 days later with the performance, the iPhone has impressed me for its consistency. The A17 Pro chip really has kept this thing flawless on the day-to-day. It literally crashes like never. Like never. You just don't see it ever happen really, unless the phone is really hot, but that usually doesn't happen for most use cases. So it's just like flawlessly smooth performance all the time, every day. So good, it's kind of boring how good it is. There's nothing to talk about. It just works and always works. Now, that is depending on your internet connection. If you have no internet connection, you could think your phone's falling apart when really it's just your network. But the Samsung also, that it's at that level too, where it really never lags either. The only issue with it though is I find some applications, they don't scroll as smooth. And I don't think that's Samsung's fault. I think some applications just simply don't scroll as smooth as the iPhones, but Performance here is also amazing. Takes really good advantage of its 12 gigabytes of RAM with its multitasking and all that. And 90 days later, I feel like I can take more advantage of the power with this phone a little bit easier. But I feel like I see a little bit more polish and just a little bit more smooth feel on the overall experience for the iPhone. So it's really tough. It's really tight. I wouldn't make this a deciding factor. Both of them are really going to please you on the day-to-day when it comes to what they're capable of in performance. The 15 Pro Max went to 8 gigs of RAM, whereas this one already had more than when this phone even launched at 12. Now, when it comes to the battery life, I have to give it to the iPhone. There's just no question about it. It lasts me a good, I would say, hour and a half to 2 hours longer than the S23 Ultra, but both of them very, very strong overall. Neither of them are going to let you down day to day. The S23 Ultra, though, does charge a lot faster. Well, not a lot faster, but it definitely charges a little faster in my experience. But the S23 Ultra has a little bit more power mode action going on, whereas the iPhone just has a simple low power mode. So if you go to power saving here, you do have things like where you can tweak, like limit the CPU speed, decrease the brightness, a little bit more complex, but also not really, because all you got to do is click that. But you can kind of customize it the way you want. That's kind of the general theme of the Samsung. Everything is like you can customize everything the way you want it, even up to the toggles up here, even down to the fonts, down to the text size. I mean, you can do that on the iPhone as well, but down to the theming options, icons, everything, lock screen, widgets. Customization is the theme you're really going to notice using a Samsung, even more so than like a Google Pixel. When it comes to the cameras, the Galaxy is definitely going to be the winner for the zoom. That's where I really like it more. The 10 times zoom, which we don't need right here where we're at. Really sharp photos, really nice software, tons of features set here. Portrait video, night mode video, and then you have 8K, which I think is overkill, but still it's pretty awesome that you could even do that. Also, you do have a nice fast super steady mode on here that allows you to get action, and tons of customization in here as well. Like I said, the general theme, customization, director's view, which you might have seen on some YouTube videos before. Some people have been using that. We also have food mode, which can take some little bit vibrant food pictures. And then you have the ability to really tweak the video without needing separate applications. Also on the front-facing camera, pretty sharp. I actually find the Samsung camera to be sharper than that of the iPhones, but I'm not sure I like it as much in certain situations, but I do think they make your face look a little bit more smooth. Now with the iPhone's camera, the 15 Pro Max, after all this time using it, I gotta say, it's been pretty darn amazing to have more zoom finally on an iPhone. I'm going 5 times and 25 times. It feels like they're closer matching up now, and while Apple doesn't give you nearly as much reach, they are getting better here. So I still give it to Samsung for the zoom, but the video quality I just love on the 15 Pro Max, and the Smart HDR5, the post-processing is amazing. We're going to see some updates to the AI on the camera on the S24 Ultra, so it'll get a little closer, but I'd still pick the iPhone all day when it comes to video, but Samsung for the zoom for sure. Now, I talked about the S Pen already, but I'm just going to say it hasn't been a major separator for me. I have given it its value points here, but after all this time, a few months, I think about this a lot, and I just really been enjoying using the S Pen on my Galaxy Tab S9 FE Plus and on my Galaxy Tab S9 Ultra. I also like using the Apple Pencil more so on the iPad. So the Apple Pencil and the Tab S9 with their S Pens, it's just more usable. This is good for a quick jot on notes down, but I really prefer pens on tablets. And this is like a mini tablet, don't get me wrong, but what I'm saying is I don't feel like this is a separator when deciding between of these, unless you're really, really into doing art on your phone, which I think is a small majority of people. But still, you know, to me, it hasn't been a separating decision in making this decision between these two. So I find the audio performance to be louder on the Samsung when you throw on Dolby Atmos. Turn it off, though, and it's definitely not as loud. I also find that the iPhone is a little bit crisper at the higher volume. So when I hit the highest volume on the iPhone 15 Pro Max, I do find it a little bit crisper. And since we're looking down here, USB-C on both of them, but the Samsung's is a little faster at transferring, and we also have a SIM card tray, no SD card slot like Samsung used to give, but you have eSIM on here, no ability to use a SIM card, and I really hope Samsung doesn't go there with the S24 Ultra. I hope they keep the SIM card available. That would be really lame if they do that. They've been known to copy Apple in the past, so we'll have to see what happens. Samsung has definitely been the leader in reception strength and phone call quality for a very long time, but I haven't found any issues with the latest model iPhones via, this comparison over the past few months. I don't really notice a huge difference. I do think the 5G is stronger on my S23 Ultra, but it could just be me thinking that. I just find it to be very snappy when I'm out and about, where I find the 5G to be just kind of not quite as 5G-ish in my experience on the iPhone all the time. But that's not to say it doesn't do it. It's probably just me not getting the best signal when I was testing it. At the end of the day, phone call quality and reception, pretty even nowadays on both of these, and I haven't found a big disparity between them over my past few months. My conclusion, after 90 days of usage with the 15 Pro Max, it's going more on 120 days here at the end of this month, closer to 4 months, versus most of the year with the S23 Ultra, is that I do feel like the 15 Pro Max takes the win here for me for the ergonomic factor. But that's just because I'm comparing it to the Ultra. If I were to compare this to the S23 Plus, it would be a very different comparison here. But I do like the ergonomics of this product over this one. But the S23 Ultra just beats it in most ways that it's hard to, like, it has longer zoom, it has a bigger, brighter display, it has a bigger battery, but it doesn't last as long, which kind of weird, but just doesn't. There's just not a lot of areas where the iPhone shuts it down. So what I feel like is that the S24 Ultra that's coming here in a couple weeks is just going to leapfrog the iPhone 15 Pro Max, like go way ahead in competition. So be subscribed for that, because we are going to compare those. I'll be trading this one in on that one. So be subscribed for that. It's going to be a showdown between the latest S24 models and the iPhones around these parts. But 90 days later, I kind of prefer the 15 Pro Max, but that doesn't take away from how great the S23 Ultra is. It still is one of the kings, if not the king, of the smartphone market until the S24 Ultra comes out. So thumbs up if you enjoyed it, subscribe if you haven't already, and if you have any questions, comments, concerns relating to purchasing one of these products, drop them down below, because a lot of people got experience around this community. I'll catch you on the next one. Nick here. Be sure to be well, and peace.